brief. I should have put a question mark, non-territorial autonomy, Lithuanian way, question mark, the case of Lithuanian Tatars and Karayims. I'm not even sure if it's applicable to, whether the concept of NTA is applicable to this case, but fair enough. I give it a shot and we'll see what it is. So when you think in terms of the presence of both Islam and Karaism in Lithuania, it's we have had our Muslim and Karaite communities for almost 700 years. They came as mercenaries mainly, but also prisoners of war and so on, immigrants, if you want, political immigrants, way back in the Middle Ages. And the process of immigration continued for a bit until the 16th century. And here's a map of Lithuania neighboring the Golden Horde, or the Khanate of the Golden Horde. Never mind if you see your country and it's a wrong map, you say, no, we were much bigger or whatever. It's just for purposes to show the border, that the Grand Duchy of Lithuania had a border with the Golden Horde. Never mind if your country has been, mispresented on this map. Couldn't care less about that at this moment. What I think may give some grounds for talking about NTA in regards to both Muslims and Karaites in Lithuania is the legal and social status of Muslims in particular, but also Karaites to a certain degree in the Polish-Lithuanian state between the 15th and 18th centuries. The Tatar nobility, as you see here on the slide, were given titles and rights almost equal to local Christian nobility, and then they would also have tracts of land for their cultivation, which later on would become their personal property. Of course, property of their kids and grandkids. And in return, these landlords had to muster armed units and be permanently ready to defend the ruler and the state. And when it comes to religion, freedom of religion was guaranteed in the Grand Duchy, and then later on the Commonwealth of Lithuania and Poland, and Muslims immediately proceeded with building mosques in their villages, and soon cemeteries formed around them. So I don't know whether in historical terms we can talk about, properly speaking, this non-territorial autonomy, but I think I am tempted to see a case here. Why? Because the Tatars would not be subject to any local legislation. They would be directly responsible to the ruler, and every new ruler would reconfirm the autonomous status of the Tatar community, which implied, of course, not only that ethnically they would be seen as different, but also because of their religious affiliation, meaning Muslim. So they would have these special, exceptional rights, which would not be territorially based, because they wouldn't live in particular territory. They'd be dispersed around the country. This would also apply to a great degree to Karaites also. So what I find is an interesting thing, that of course if you look at the Muslim community and the Tatar community in the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, they had come as immigrants from what may or should probably be considered as Dar al-Islam into Dar al-Harb. And then they made that Dar al-Harb their motherland. So Tatars, they don't have, or today the Tatars, they claim they don't have any other motherland. Lithuania is their motherland. So they claim to be locals. And there must have been a number of factors that made them to decide first to come to, still back then, pagan Lithuania, and remain in a fairly staunchly Catholic Lithuania, or Lithuania, Poland of the time, and not to migrate back to wherever. Because what we see here in the Balkans, many of the Muslims, they did relocate to the shrinking Ottoman territories, or later on even Republican Turkey. This didn't happen with the Lithuanian Tatars, although with one exception. They did actually come to what today is Romania and Bulgaria for a brief period of time, but that's probably not that important. So now when you look at what the Tatars and the Karaites got in Lithuania, was there was some kind of a social contract that I tentatively want to call this NTA thing, because they were first the guests and then also protectors of the ruler. And what you see there is this, and then we had this loyalty to the state, loyalty to the land, which they claim to have proved time and again. But that's history, and then I should probably go a bit faster. When Lithuania gained its independence in the interwar period, it's an interesting thing that the Muslim community, the Tatar community, would claim that they had been very loyal, that had been local, if you want, and then they have to have certain rights. And then it's an interesting thing that in the interwar period, there was no legislation that would award these rights, but the community, the Muslim community, appears to have been very much liked by the government, which even built a mosque for the community on the state funds. But when you look at today's situation of Tatars and Karaites, they are part of the family of traditional religions. And of course, in this case, both the Tatars, Muslims, and then the Karaites, it's ethnic-confessional thing. It's Tatars see themselves as Muslims, and of course also Karaites would see themselves as Karaites. So this the traditional religions also means sort of also recognition of not only religious but some sort of ethnic rights. And I'm not going to go into detail what these rights cover, but wide-ranging compared to the groups, religious or ethnic confessional, that are not considered traditional. But I think what is interesting, well, these are the numbers which are probably very funny for you. You say, well, that's the number. Yeah, well, Lithuania is less than 3 million, so you cannot expect many people there. Just some of the mosques to take a look, and I'm rushing through, I know, but that's what I have to do. And then the Karaite Knesses that we still have in Lithuania, 2 of them. So, but what is, I think, interesting in this case is that what we have is that from the point of view of the Lithuanian state, Islam in Lithuania means Tatars. So Tatars have their sort of ethnic confessional autonomy, and the state is happy with that. But the thing is that what's happening now is that we see that through immigration, but also conversion, we have now other Muslims. And those other Muslims, being non-Tatar, they also claim the same rights as the Tatar Muslims, because they say, well, we are as good as the Tatars. In fact, it's actually even more interesting. The converts in particular, but also immigrants, see the Tatars as having almost sort of collectively apostatized. They say, look, the state recognizes Islam as one of the traditional faiths, and then the Tatar Muslims have these rights. But they don't practice Islam. So it's actually us, the non-Tatars, who practice this Islam. So all this autonomy should include us, the non-Tatar sort of community. And so far, so good. But and that's actually the one of the last slides that I have, is that as long as Tatars are in control of Muslim organizations and the property, soon Islam will continue to be recognized as one of the traditional faiths in Lithuania. However, once non-Tatar, and especially revivalist leaning, I'm not necessarily suggesting Salafi Muslims take over, and this is already actually happening, there will inevitably be tensions between the state and Muslim organizations due to their different understanding of what Islam in Lithuania is to mean. And this is the absolutely last slide. So what I see as a prospective outcome, eventually Islam will cease to be accepted as part of the Lithuanian cultural heritage. This is what the law on religions actually implies. It doesn't really say directly that Islam is part, but it says that Sunni Muslims are part of this Lithuanian cultural heritage. And this will upset the relationship between Muslims and the state, and ultimately render the current social contract, or if I may say this non-territorial autonomy, irrelevant and void, and a new social contract will have to be reached if feasible. In the end, there will be little special about the Lithuanian case, which I so far see, but I didn't have enough time to explain. And of course, with the Karaite community, perspectives are even more dim. In Lithuania, it is destined to disappear. I mean, it's been shrinking. And if there's been any case of non-territorial autonomy for the Karaites, it'll just go. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, just a quick question. Do you equate social contract with NTA?
No, I don't. But I'm wondering whether in these cases, the 2 cases that I tried to not even analyze here, but just to portray whether we can talk about NTA at all. I'm not sure, and as I said, I should have probably put the question mark on the title. I do sense there's been a social contract of sorts between the Tatar community on the one hand and the state. That I could argue for. Now, does that translate into an NTA arrangement? I'm not sure, and I'm not pushing it too far. It's just that I was wondering whether we could conceptualize in these terms at all, because most of the people here would talk about ethnic community. So for me, I could have taken the Polish ethnic community and would have argued along the lines and would be on a safe ground. Didn't want to do that. I don't do research on ethnic communities, or at least not Polish community. I do research on Muslim communities in post-communist Europe, and I'm coming myself from Lithuania. I thought, well, let me just try and play with this. I don't imply that may ever be translated into a proper sort of research-based article or something. No, I don't necessarily see it that way.
You have a law the rights. We don't need NTA. No. The problem in democracy is the majority and minority have a problem we discuss for his decision of the state. It's the problem of the democracy, not the problem of NTA. No?
Okay, that's your comments. David?
Yeah, I mean, mine's more of a comment just to Egdūnas. I just think the heritage of the Lithuanian and Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth that you talk about is very interesting, because I mean, I know that the arrangements for the Jewish communities, for instance, fed into that law, which was definitely an NTA law that existed during the early 1920s, and it inspired Dubnov's, Dubnov became one of the main thinkers and was inspired by it. So, I don't know, I just think, to what extent would you see the arrangements that had existed for the Muslim communities as analogous to the Jewish ones, or were they like a separate case? And just as a follow-up question, forgive my ignorance, is there also a similar community in today's Poland?
The answer is, I haven't really compared, the Muslim and the Jewish cases in either Lithuania or Poland or the joint states. So I may not be able to say whether there's just sort of parallel, sort of duplicate kind of things. I suspect there would be. However, from my reading, the Muslim community has had those rights for a much longer period of time. The Jewish community came a bit later, and it got its rights much later, so to say. Yes, but today, of course, we have almost, a kin community, a Muslim community in Poland, so, and these are cousins, if you want, they used to be in the same state.
Are there any kind of similar arrangements that would apply to them in the Polish context?
Well, in Poland, it's even much stronger, because they have a special law dating to 1936, I believe, which really gives all these possible rights to them. And the funny thing is that in that law, it says that the mufti's seat is in Vilnius, which used to be part of Poland, and that law is still valid. So technically, today's Polish mufti should sit in Vilnius, which is the capital city of Lithuania today.
Well, let's give